Hello everyone, welcome back again. In the previous session, we discussed what a pipeline is and how it is important. But now it's time to understand the different types of data that flow through the data pipeline. So we have broadly the data can be classified into three major types, that is structured data, semi-structured data, and the unstructured data. So let's go with what is structured data. So here, this data is well organized and it has got a fixed schema. Okay. For example, a predefined number of columns and data types. It means you have this table and you have predefined number of columns. This is column 1, column 2, and column 3, column 4, and so on. Okay, so very common examples here is the database tables, and you have the spreadsheets and CSV files, right? Like you say, if you run a query, say for example, select star from orders, so you will get that structured information of the orders, like what is the order number, what is the order date, at what date it has been ordered, and what is the price, user details, and so on. So whatever the data you see, it is well organized and you can read it very easily without any difficulties, right? It means that you will get the a neat and neatly arranged data in the form of rows and columns, and hence this has got the fixed structure, and it's a predictable. Okay, so you can easily figure it out, so that reading of the structured data is very simple. So the next category is the semi-structured data, where the data has some structure but it is not fixed like tables, right? So you can understand the format for sure, but the schema is flexible, right? For example, we have the JSON files, XML, AVRO, and such kind of files. Okay, the structure is known. If you take the example of JSON file, you know the structure of that, but the it has not got some fixed schema in that. Okay, you have the structure but it is not fixed like tables. Okay, so that kind of data is known as semi-structured data. It means the file doesn't follow strict a kind of a tabular format, but they still have some hierarchy or the structure. Okay, so the next is unstructured data. Here the data has no schema, and it has no structure, and it has no schema as well, so you cannot predefine, I mean there is no predefined structure or schema for unstructured kind of data. So one of the simple examples here, you can say the image files and text files and video files and PDF. If you see the video file, you cannot see the structure of that, right? Like the same way, if you use the image, you cannot see the definite schema or the structure there. So you cannot define the columns or rows for such kind of data. Because of that, it is called the completely unstructured. Okay, let's to bundle it up. Structured, it means fixed schema. Semi-structured means flexible schema, and unstructured means no schema at all. So these are the broadly categorized types of data. I hope this is clear. Let's move to the next slide. Now comes one more important aspect. What is batch and what is streaming kind of data? Yep. So now this part is again very important, because based on the type of data, you decide which Google Cloud service to use. If you have a batch data, you can use some service. If it's streaming data, then you can use another service in case of Google Cloud. So understanding these two is of prime importance here, right? So what happens in batch processing? Here, the data size is known. Let's start with simple. And there is a definite start and end of the data. Make sense? And the data is collected over a finite period of time, right? And it has to be processed all at once. So this seems quite tricky. We'll go to the blackboard. First, we'll broadly discuss what is batch and streaming. We'll go to the blackboard and we'll come up with an example so that you can get you can understand the concepts quite easily. Make sense? So next is we have streaming kind of data. So streaming data is opposite to the batch data, where the streaming data is generated continuously. It is generated and processed continuously. Sorry, I need to take off this word. It is generated continuously, and up to one extent it is processed also, but let's not use process. I apologize for this. So the data is generated continuously, and that generated, the continuous generation of data, you need to process it by using transformation steps. Okay, so let's erase this part. So here the streaming data is generated continuously and in a real time. So one more word of streaming data is real time data. And here you cannot define the start and end of the data. It is just coming out of a source it's just flowing rigorously, and it's just flowing very fast, so that you cannot even define the start and end of the data, right? So, which are the examples? We have the live dashboards and the real-time logs. I mean, the sensors of a machine in a factory reading every second. It is generating tremendous amount of data continuously. It's not batching itself. It's just generating continuously. So these are the two varieties of data. We have batch and streaming. I hope this sounds a bit tricky. Let's move to the blackboard and we will understand what with one simple example. Okay, let's go to the blackboard. Perfect. Now let's understand the batch data. Yep. So let's have batch data. What happens is there is one huge tank. Here you need to fill the water, right? You have to fill the water into this huge tank. And I have a tank, I have a tap here. Okay, so I have a tap something like this, and here the water keeps on flowing. What I will do, I will use these three buckets. Okay, and these many buckets here, right? And so on, something like this. So what I will do, I will fill the water in these buckets one by one, and suppose the duration is say 10 minutes. So after every 10 minutes, I will pour the data into, I will pour the water into this tank on every 10 minutes. It means my timing is bounded, right? For every 10 minutes, I will run a batch. After 10 minutes, run a batch, so that these buckets, I am going to pour it in table. Next 10 minutes, again these buckets, I am going to pour it in this water tank, right? So I have the fixed boundary. I have a batch of 10 minutes batch, so that after every 10 minutes I need to process the data. Again after 10 minutes I need to process the next batch and the upcoming batch. Here the name itself suggests. So this is how we are going to handle the data as well. So this is not that 100% relevant. So this is just for your understanding purpose, right? So that's how the batch data we are going to process. Let's see what streaming data is all about. Same example, I have a big tap and I have a tap here. Okay, something like this. Okay, and here I don't have any bucket. Okay, directly I am pouring the water into this tank. Okay, there is no batch, there is no intervals of 10 minutes or 15 minutes, number of buckets and all. The data is keep on flowing like a stream of water, and hence this is known as streaming data. We don't have a defined start and we don't have a defined end. The data keeps on coming from a sensors or some other input sources. Here we have given the example of water, but let's think in a real way, where there is one machine in a factory which continuously sends the data, and that data is too fast or it's a streaming that you're not able to define a start or end. Make sense? Usually, handling the streaming data is bit challenging compared to batch data, because we can run a batch after every 10, I mean, every interval of time. That makes your job easy. But here we need to handle this with some extra caution, right? So this is the difference between the batch and streaming data. So let's have one more, some real world example here. Suppose I have, say, I will write something like this. Every 12 a.m. in the midnight, I want to run a batch that will process all the orders generated in one day. Okay, after 24 hours, I need to run a batch. So here I am defining the timing, right? Because I have a time span of 24 hours. After 24 hours, whatever the data is generated, I am going to process it. I am going to process through a daily batch, right? And if you take an example of streaming one, we have a machine, okay, in your factory, and it is just generating the streams of data continuously, and you cannot, define any start and end date. I need to process this data as well, right? We are not defining any time, start time or end time, like daily batches, weekly batches, quarterly batches, or 3 hour batch, and so on. The moment data comes, we need to process it, and we need to process and put that into our sync. So this is known as the streaming kind of data, and absolutely very important, very tricky, and most of the questions will be on such kind of scenarios in your GCP examination. All right, cool. So that's all about in this video. I hope you are clear at this point of time, but later definitely we are going to go in depth to understand this.